Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to our 27th lesson of our simplified Tajweed series, which is a series of Tajweed lessons introduced by Quran University, uniquely designed Quran learning management system with the purpose of introducing Tajweed in a modern and easy approach. Through this series of lessons, you will be introduced to Tajweed rules using a unique, modern and innovative approach to teach Tajweed that utilizes the color codes of Mus'haf al-Tajweed as a common denominator that links those lessons to Tajweed rules. With such approach, we aim to make the understanding of Tajweed rules much easier and to practically help you to apply those rules while reading the Quran. Our topic for this lesson is the Hamazat in the Holy Quran and its relationship with the differentiation med. Our objectives for this lesson is to define Hamzatul Wasl wa Hamzatul Qata'. Hamzatul Wasl means connecting Hamza. Connecting means wasl, and Hamzatul Qata' means separating Hamza, where Qata' means to cut or to separate. And after we understand what's meant by wasl and Qata', then we'd be able to differentiate the two and understand what makes them different. And that will be further illustrated by taking examples on each. Then we'll learn about the cases where the connecting Hamza append the separating Hamza, and then we'll look at the opposite situation where the separating Hamza append the connecting Hamza. By that time, we'd be ready to understand the relationship between those Hamzas and the difference med. What are the types of this difference med? And then we'll take examples on each type. Let's quickly revise the letters of the Arabic alphabet. We said that there are 28 letters in the written alphabet, and one extra letter exists to make the spoken alphabet, which is basically the Hamza. So if we consider adding the Hamza to those 28 letters, then we'll be ending up with 29 letters. We need to concentrate now on this added Hamza, where we're going to explore how this Hamza would affect the vowels. First, we'll illustrate how adding a Hamza on a vowel would affect how we write the vowel. Hamza is written as a small head of the Ayn that will be just written on top of the vowel. And if we look at the alphabet, there are three vowels. The alif, a, and if we add a Hamza to that a, then we express that by writing it on top of the vowel, looking like this. Now, if we move to the second vowel, the u, then it will look like a small Hamza on top of the waw. And then if we look at the e, then adding a Hamza on top of it would look like this. This is how it looks when we add a Hamza on top of a vowel. But how would that affect the pronunciation of the vowel? The pronunciation of the a would be interrupted. Instead of saying a, we'll say a. Instead of saying oo, we'll say oo. And instead of saying ye, we'll say I. This could be very clarified and further illustrated if we take this example. Bas here is a vowel without a Hamza. It becomes pronounced with an interrupted and shortened lengthening of the vowel. If we add a Hamza, instead of saying bas, we say bas. So this is a vowel without a Hamza, bas. And this is a vowel with a Hamza added, it becomes bas. This example is for boos. When adding a Hamza on this vowel, it becomes boos. Boos, boos. And this is an example with a ya. Bees, the e becomes shortened bis. Bis when we add a Hamza on it. Now we'll take some examples of the Holy Quran and we'll attempt extracting the Hamazat, the Hamzas, from those examples. We'll start with the first ayah.
وَأَنْجَيْنَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا.
We realize that there is a Hamza here at the beginning of Anjayna, this Hamza. And then there is another Hamza here in the beginning of Alladina. And there is another Hamza here at the beginning of Amanu. We're now going to take another example, and let's listen for that.
بِئْسَ الِاسْمُ الْفُسُوقُ بَعْدَ الْإِيمَانِ.
If we look at this ayah, we'll find that there is a Hamza here on a ya. This Hamza is on a ya, bi's. And then there is another Hamza here at the top of the alif, and there is another one here at the second alif. So there are two Hamzat on al-ism. Then there is one more here, al-fusuq, at the beginning of al-fusuq, or an alif. And there is one more hamza here, at the beginning of al-iman, at the beginning of al, and then a hamza at the beginning of iman, under the alif. Now we're going to take one more example, this ayah. Let's listen.
وما يضرونك من شيء.
We realize that there is a hamza at the end of shay. This hamza after shay, on the top of the ya. So if we look at these different hamzas that we have extracted from these three ayahs, we'll realize that we can conclude two things. The first one, that there are two different symbols used for the hamza. The symbol used here, and here, and here, and here, and here. The symbol looks like a small ayn, or the head of the ayn. The symbol is different from another symbol that we'll find used in the other examples on the other hamzas. This one, and this one, and this one, and this one. The second symbol looks like a small sad. Now we can clearly ask ourselves, why do we have two different symbols? And the logical answer is that there should be a difference between the two different hamzas. And that's why we illustrate them by showing two different symbols. So our first conclusion is that there are two different types of hamzas. The second conclusion we find is that we notice a variation in the location of the hamzas. They could be either at the start, or at the middle, or at the end of the words. This is an example of a hamza at the start of the letter. And this is an example of a hamza at the middle of the letter. While this is an example of a hamza at the end of the letter. We have just concluded that the hamza could be either located at the start of the word, or it could be located at the end of the word, or it could be located in between, in the middle of the word. Now let's start with the situation where the hamza is located at the end of the word, and look at different ways of writing such a hamza at the end. It can be written solo on the line, like this: ma, shay, su. In an alif or a ya or a waw case, the hamza is written at the end of the word on the line, solo on the line. Let's take another example where it can be written on an alif. Malja', makhba'. There is the alif and the hamza is on top of it. And there is another scenario where it can be written on a waw. Tabatu', tawatu'. The hamza is on top of a waw. The hamza is on top of a waw. And then it can be written on top of a ya, like mawani', marafi'. There is a ya and the hamza is on top of it. A ya and a hamza on top of it. So, what are the rules that we base the decision to write the hamza solo on the line or on top of an alif or a waw or a ya? We'll start by the first rule, for which we write it solo on the line, where the rule dictates that if the hamza is preceded by a still letter with a sukoon, if we look at ma, the a is still with sukoon. Similarly, the ya is having a sukoon and the waw is having a sukoon. Whether an original sukoon or a sukoon due to a shadda. Now, in those cases, we write the hamza solo on the line. Now, the rule that makes us write the hamza on top of an alif is basically when it is preceded with a letter with a fatha. We'll find here the jim has a fatha, the ba has a fatha. In those cases, the hamza is written on an alif. The rule where we write the hamza on a waw is when it is preceded by a dhamma. Tabatu', the ta has a dhamma. Tawatu', the ta has a dhamma. Those cases makes us write the hamza on top of a waw. Let's see the rule that makes us write the hamza on a ya, and that's basically when it is preceded by a letter with a kasra. Mawani'. See, ni here is the noon has a kasra. Marafi', the fa has a kasra. While in shay, the ya has a sukoon. Well, that's why the first rule where it's written on the line, solo on the line, is basically that rule that applies. So in shay, it's written solo on the line, while in mawani' or marafi' it's written on the ya. Now we'll move to the second location where the hamza is in the middle of the word. Again, it can be written solo on the line, like in قراءة, مقروءة, and it can be written on top of an alif, like in سأل, and it can be written on top of a waw, like in مسؤول, تؤمر, and it can be written on top of a ya, like in طائرة or بئس, and مشيئة. Now, again, there are rules for which it can be written in any of these different forms. The rule to write it solo on the line is if the hamza comes with a fatha. See, hamza with a fatha, hamza with a fatha, after a mad alif or a mad waw, an alif with mamduda or waw mamduda, as in qira'a, mad alif, maqru'a, mad waw. In those cases, we write the hamza solo on the line. Now, it will be written on an alif if it has a fatha or preceded with a letter with a fatha. Like in here, the sin is having a fatha, the preceding letter, and the hamza itself has a fatha. Sa'ala. In that case, we write it on top of an alif. It will be written on top of a waw if it has a dhamma or preceded with a dhamma. In here, mas'ul has a dhamma itself. In tu'mar, it is preceded with a letter with dhamma. In both cases, we write it on top of a waw. It's written on top of a ya if it has a kasra or preceded by a letter with a kasra or preceded with a letter with a ya. Like in ta'ira, here it has a kasra itself. In bi's, it has been preceded by a letter with a kasra. In mashi'a, it has been preceded by a letter with a ya. In all these three cases, it is written on top of a ya. Till now, we have covered two situations where the hamza is at the end and where the hamza is at the middle of the word. And there is one more situation to be discussed, which is where the hamza is at the start of the word. We had started with the middle and the end because those two situations shares a common fact that the hamza in them is always written and pronounced. While in the situation where the hamza is at the start, we're going to illustrate a bit difference by giving two examples, iman and wasta'inu. In iman, the hamza is written clearly here as a small head of a ayn or a hamza symbol, and we call that hamza the separating hamza, hamzatul qata'. And that hamza is always written and pronounced. While in the case of wasta'inu, this hamza, which looks like a small head of a sad, called the connecting hamza, hamzatul wasl, this hamza has some unique features regarding its writing and pronunciation. It is always written in Uthmani script, but it's not written in modern scripting, in our current way of writing. So it's written in Uthmani script and is occasionally pronounced, and in other cases it is not pronounced. So this is a bit of a problematic hamza, and we'll pay attention to that. In the Uthmani script, it's written like a small sad. In modern text, it's not written at all, and we only write the separating hamza, hamzatul qata'. In terms of pronunciation, this hamza is sometimes not pronounced, and that's what we're going to explain in the coming few slides. Now, let's compare the hamazat at the beginning of the words by looking at the two previous verses that we took as examples earlier in this lesson, and looking at the hamazat that starts the beginning of the words. Now we'll find that there are أنجينا الذين آمنوا in the first verse, and الاسم الفسوق الإيمان in the second verse, and we'll pull those that are similar. These hamazat are separating hamza examples, hamzatul qata', while the others, these ones, are examples of connecting hamza, hamzatul wasl. So what's the difference other than having the different symbols? We'll find that we call this hamzatul qata'. It acts as a separator between a word and the following word. Qata' means separate, where it separates the word with a hamza from the previous word, where pronouncing this hamza clearly defines the word with the hamza from the previous one, and comparing it with the other hamza, hamzatul wasl, that is translated connecting hamza, would illustrate the difference between the two. Hamzatul wasl is called connecting because it is used to connect a word to the previous words. And looking at the example will illustrate this. Let's look at the example al-ism. Al-ism, bi'sal-ism. Bi'sal-ism. So basically it's connecting bits to al-ism, and this is called a connecting hamza. And the other one, al-ism. Al is al-tarif followed by ism. So connecting ism with al, we say al-ism, al-ism. So basically it's connecting these two words. Al-ismul fusuqu. Al-ismul fusuqu, this connects al-fusuqu with al-ism before it. And ba'dal iman. Ba'dal, this corrects al with ba'da. So it's a connecting hamza. So all of those are considered connecting hamza because they are used to connect words to previous words. It's pronounced when starting the reading. If we say al-ism, we pronounce it. But if we say bi'sal, bi'sal, it's not pronounced. And if we say ism, we pronounce it. But if we say al-ism, 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 it's not pronounced. Al-fusuq, when we start with it, we pronounce it. But if we say al-ismul fusuq, then the hamza is not pronounced. So it is pronounced when starting reading from it. But it's dropped, not pronounced, when connecting the word that has the hamza with the previous word. And the reason for that is that there is an Arabic language rule that Arabs don't start with a still word. They don't start the word with a sukoon while starting speaking. So a simple trick where a connecting hamza is added before a sukoon letter to allow us to pronounce a letter that starts with sukoon. Simply look at these examples. If we look here, al, after the connecting hamza there is a lam with sukoon. After this connecting hamza there is a sin with sukoon. After this connecting hamza there is a lam with sukoon. And after this connecting hamza there is a lam with sukoon. So connecting hamza allows us to connect a word before with a word that is starting with sukoon, and resolves the issue of the rule that does not allow us to start with sukoon while reading Arabic words. So with those examples, we have known enough about the separating hamza and connecting hamza that allows us to differentiate them. And for that, we're going to use a table. On the left here, we have the separating hamza, and on the right, we have the connecting hamza. The first differentiation point is looking at how original is the hamza in terms of the structure of the word. The separating hamza is original letter, which is part of the word, while the connecting hamza is an extra hamza. It's an extra letter that is added to the original word at the start. The second point of comparison is the location of the hamza. And since the separating hamza is original, it can happen anywhere at the start, the middle, or the end of the word. In this example, anjayna, the hamza is located at the start of the word. In bi's here, it's located at the middle, and in shay, it is located at the end. Now let's compare that with the connecting hamza, which could only happen at the start of the word, like in ista'inu. The hamza here is at the beginning of the word. The third differentiation point is related to pronunciation. When are the cases that we should pronounce the hamza, and when are the cases that we won't pronounce it? In case of separating hamza, it is always pronounced, whether we start with it or we continue recitation through it. Like in the case of anjayna, if we have the hamza at the beginning, at the start of the word, and whether we just start reading from it, where we start recitation from this hamza, we say anjayna, or whether we have some words before it, so we read something, then we say wa anjayna, still we pronounce the hamza. So the hamza is pronounced whether we're starting with it or whether we're continuing reading this word that has the hamza in a continuum of reading or recitation that has words before it and it's continuing it through it. While in the case of connecting hamza, it's only pronounced when reading or recitation is starting at this word, like ista'inu, we say ista'inu. But if it is continuing, it will not be pronounced. So if we say something wasta'inu, we will notice here that was, there is no wa ista'inu. In here, there is ista'inu, the hamza is pronounced. But in continuous recitation, we say wasta'inu, as if there is no hamza at all. So, in conclusion, the separating hamza is always pronounced, while the connecting hamza is only pronounced upon starting recitation or reading from it, and it is not pronounced if we are reading through it. That is, if we're using it to connect previous words with the word that has the Hamza. The fourth differentiation point is related to comparing writing versus the pronunciation. In terms of the separating Hamza, it's always written and always pronounced. We always have anjayna, whether at the beginning, or wa anjayna, it is continuing. Both are written. You can see the Hamza is written clearly and both are pronounced. Now, in the case of connecting Hamza, the writing in the script happens all the time. Ista'inu in Quran, wasta'inu here, whether we're starting with it or we're using it in continuum. Now, this is always written in terms of script, of manuscript, but it is not written in modern Arabic. So this is always written and pronounced, while this in the first case is written and pronounced, and in this case it's written and not pronounced, but sometimes not written in modern scripting, but written always in Ottoman script. Now we'll see the impact of how the location of the Hamza would affect the writing in the case of the separating Hamza, where it's written over an alif if it comes with a fatha or a dhamma. If it comes with a fatha like in anjayna, it's written on an alif. Here it's with a dhamma. Utina, it's also written over an alif. Now it will be written under the alif if it comes with a kasra like iman, iman. While if the separating Hamza comes at the middle or the last, the end of the word, then it will be written on the line like in shay, or on an alif like in bas. On the line shay and bas, it is written on an alif, on top of the alif. Another possibility is that it will be written on top of a waw, like in bus, or on top of a ya, as in bis. When it comes to writing, where we write the connecting Hamza, in the Ottoman script, it's always written on top of the alif, as in this example here, bi'sal ism. Al-ism, there is a fatha here, and Hamzatul Wasl is written on top of the alif, bi'sal, bi'sal. Now, in this one here, in ism, the Hamzatul Wasl is not written under, although there is a kasra there, the Hamza is not written down, it's written on top of the alif, although it has a kasra. So whether it is a fatha or a kasra, it's always written on top of the alif in Hamzatul Wasl in Ottoman script, which is different from modern writing, where when we have a fatha and a dhamma, we write it on top of the alif, and when we have a kasra, we write it under the alif. And now, the last differentiating point in our table, which is the symbol used to differentiate the two. The symbol used for the separating Hamza is the Hamza symbol, which looks like the small head of the Ain letter. It looks like this. And in case of the connecting Hamza, the symbol looks like a small sad. Please note that the sad symbol for the connecting Hamza is only used in the Ottoman script in the Quran, and is not used in the modern writing of Arabic. Both the separating and the connecting Hamza could append different types of words and therefore leads to different situations or cases. So let's look at these different cases whether both the separating and connecting Hamza append different types of words. In Arabic, words could be classified into three types. The first type is ahruf, participles and prepositions. Second type is asma, nouns. And the third type is af'al, verbs. Al-af'al, verbs, are further classified into several types of verbs on the basis of when the verb took place, into a past tense, fi'lun madi, or present tense, fi'lun hadir, or command tense, fi'lu amr. All verbs are based on the past tense, which is further classified based on the number of the letters that constitutes its essential makeup. So in order to examine any verb, we take it into its past tense, then we count its letters, being 3, 4, 5 letters, or 6 letters. And accordingly, we name the verb as a 3-letter past tense verb, or a 4 letters, or 5 letters, or 6 letters past tense verb. To illustrate this, we're going to take examples of past tense with different number of letters. We're going to start with a 3 letters example, the verb akhadha, meaning took. It has 3 letters, a, kha, and the third letter is the. So it's a 3-letter past tense. Next is a 4 letters past tense example, ahsana, meaning made better. It has 4 letters, a, ha, sa, na, ahsana. Now we're going to take 5 letters example, which is اختلف, meaning made a difference. It has 5 letters. Now a 6 letters example, استخرج, meaning extracted. It has 6 letters. Now let's take those 4 different examples of 3, 4, 5, and 6 letters past tense and see how that would affect the different other tenses, the present tense, the command tense, and the source of the word. Let's start with أخذ. أخذ, if we want to make it present, then it becomes يأخذ. We add a ya. To make it فعل أمر, a command tense, we say خذ. And the source is أخذ. And we say أخذ يأخذ خذ أخذ. أخذ يأخذ خذ أخذ. Now we'll do the same thing for 4 letters. أحسن. يحسن is the present tense, and the command tense is أحسن إحسانا. أحسن يحسن أحسن إحسانا. أحسن يحسن أحسن إحسانا. Now we're going to take the 5 letters example. اختلف. يختلف. اختلف. اختلافا. اختلف يختلف اختلف اختلافا. اختلف يختلف اختلف اختلافا. Now we're going to the 6th letter استخرج. يستخرج استخرج استخراجا. استخرج يستخرج استخرج استخراجا. استخرج يستخرج استخرج استخراجا. Don't worry about these details. You don't need to memorize it for your tajweed to be good. We had only brought it to your attention to realize that the making of different tenses and source out of the past tense would result in different types of alifs and hamzas. Like this hamza in أخذ, it is hamzatu qata', while this alif in إحسانا, اختلافا, استخراجا, and استخرج is hamzatu wasl. And in here it is in أحسن, it is a hamzatu qata'. So basically there are certain situations where differentiating the past tense into its different tenses, present, command, or into a source would actually affect how the hamza would appear, as we're going to illustrate when we're going to talk about verbs in this table. But first, let's discuss the effect of al-huruf, the participles and prepositions, on the type of the hamza. The rule is that whenever we have a participle and preposition, a harf, except al, it will always be with a separating hamza. So if we look at all these participles and prepositions, we'll find them all starting with a separating hamza, as in, an, anna, alla, aw, amma. All of them start with a separating hamza on top of the alif. Now in those, inna, in, illa, imma, ila, they have the separating hamza under the alif. Now if we look at the connecting hamza, then it will be associated with al-ta'rif, alif, lam, al. Al is used to identify a name. For example, if we have kitab, meaning book, then if we add al before the book, we say al-kitab, it means the book. So kitab, meaning book, is different from al-kitab, which means the book. And this al added before the name is called al-ta'rif, meaning identity, al. Like in this example, alhamd, we see here that al-ta'rif, alif lam, the a part has a connecting hamza, hamzatu wasl, which is represented by a little sad in Al-Quran Al-Kareem, in the Uthmani script, while in the normal text we don't write the hamza on top of it. Another example, Ar-Rahman, al-ta'rif behind the name of Rahman is having a little sad indicating a connecting hamza. And similarly in Ar-Rahim, we see the little sad of connecting hamza that we don't see in today's modern text writing. Similarly in Ad-Din, we find that little sad indicating the connecting hamza in Uthmani script, which is absent in today's modern writing. Now let's move to the effect of verbs on defining the type of Hamza that will be appended to it. And let's start with the association of what verbs with the separating Hamza. And we'll find that all present tense verbs starts with separating Hamza, while other tenses of the verb other than the present tense would depend on the number of the past tense of those verbs. And we'll start by the three letters past tense, akala and akhada, and its source has a separating Hamza, but not its command tense. Similarly, the four letters, any four letters, past tense, and its source, and its command tense would have a separating Hamza. Now, the rest is associated with connecting Hamza. So basically the five letters, so 3 and 4 are associated with separating Hamza. 5 tense, whether it's the past tense or the command or the source, and the 6th letter, again being the past tense or the command or the source, are all associated with connecting Hamza. You realize here that we don't have the present tense, no present tense, no present tense, no present tense, because the present tense is always associated with the separating Hamza. And if we want to summarize in one table, we will say that the present tense is always associated with separating Hamza. That is looking like this little ayn here. In all, whether it's a 3 letter, 4 letter, 5 letter, or 6 letter, all of them, 3, 4, 5, and 6, are with present tense. Now, the past tense, if it is 3 or 4, then it is associated with separating Hamza. So we'll find the past tense associated with separating Hamza. For 4 letters, even the command tense is. For 3 letters, the command tense is not. Now, anything remaining is going to be associated with a connecting Hamza. So we'll find that the 5 letters and the 6 letters tenses are associated with connecting Hamza, except in the present tense. Now that we have covered the participles and prepositions and verbs, we're left now with the nouns. And we'll start with the connecting Hamza appending the nouns. Connecting Hamza append both standard names and heard names. Arabic nouns could be one of 2 types, standard or heard. We'll start first with the heard names. And those heard names are those names that does not follow any standard name rules. There are 10 names in the Arabic, where only 7 of those 10 are mentioned in the Holy Quran. And these 7 names are Ibn, Ibnah, Ithnan, Ithnatan, Umru, Imra'a, Wasm. And we're going to give an example from the Holy Quran on each. We'll start with Ibn and Ibnah. The example for Ibn is Isa ibn Maryam. Ibn Maryam. Here, Isa ibn Maryam in the Uthmani script has a connecting Hamza, Hamza to Wasl on top of it. Similarly, with Maryam ibnat Imran, we'll find in the Uthmani script it has a Hamza to Wasl. Mind you that in the written modern Arabic, we don't write the Hamza, while in the Quran we write the symbol of the small sad. The third and the fourth words are Ithnan and Ithnatan, meaning 2. Ithnan as in Thaniyathnain, as written in modern Arabic text, and here is its Uthmani script, where we see a small side on the alif of Ithnain. Then the example of Ithnatain, Nisa'un fawqa Ithnatain. Realize the difference between modern text and the Uthmani script, where again we see a small side representing the connecting Hamza over the alif of Ithnatain. Now the 5th and the 6th words, Umru and Imra'a, meaning a man and a woman. And an example for Imru is In imru'un halak. We see it here in normal modern text, and this is how it looks in Uthmani script, and we see that there is the little sad symbol representing the connecting Hamza in Uthmani script, and it is absent in modern text. Similar thing is for Imra'a. وَإِنْ إِمْرَأَةٌ خَافَتْ. We see here the modern text showing the connecting Hamza without a symbol, while in Uthmani script it has the little sad on top of it. Now the 7th word, we said there are 7 out of 10 heard names that are present in the Quran. The 7th is Ism. Ism, the example, وَاذْكُرُ اسْمَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ. This is how it looks in modern text without a symbol, while in Uthmani script we'll find that Ism has the little side representing the connecting Hamza. Now, as we covered the heard names, we are left with the standard names. And they are called standard because the standard rules applies on them, which basically is that the name is usually extracted as a source from the past tense verbs in Arabic language. And the standard names that has a connecting hamza are those names that are extracted from a 5-letter or 6-letter past tense verbs. Remember at an earlier stage of this lesson where we talked about Arabic verbs as being classified into 3, 4, 5, and 6-letter verbs. It is only those 5-letter and 6-letter verbs that the names extracted from it, the source of it, that would have a connecting hamza. Other than those would have a separating hamza, hamzatul wasl. So all names except those hard names and standard names related to the 5th and 6th letter past tense, basically then the 3rd and the 4th letter, are all going to have a separating hamza. Now we look into the haraka of the connecting hamza. Harakatu hamzatil wasl. Is it going to be an a or u or e? Is it a fatha or a dhamma or a kasra? Such haraka is based again on the type of word that hamzatul wasl would append. And if it is a participle and preposition, which is al-ta'rif, the only participle and preposition that hamzatul wasl would append, as in al-ard, it will always be with fatha. We say al-ard, al-ard, not ul-ard or il-ard, but al-ard, Now when hamzatul wasl comes with a noun in the source name, like istikbara, we'll find that it always comes with a kasra. We say istikbara. We don't say astakbara or ustakbara, but e. So it always comes with a kasra when it is with nouns, istikbara. Now, when it comes with verbs, then there'll be a variation. We'll look into the 3rd letter of the verb. If the 3rd letter of the verb is an original dhamma, as in urkud, we find that the kaf here has a dhamma. It is the 3rd letter of this verb. And in that case, we will pronounce the hamzatul wasl with dhamma, u, urkud. While if the 3rd letter is with presenting dhamma, like ibnu, or it is with a kasra, like as we see here, the ba with kasra, isbir, or with fatha, as we see istaghfara, the ta here has a fatha. In those 3 cases, it will be pronounced with a kasra, ibnu, isbir, istaghfir, all with kasra. If you have just noticed that we have mentioned here that there is a difference between original and occasional dhamma. So what is that difference? We're going to explain what we mean by occasional dhamma. Some Arabic language verbs appears as if their 3rd letter has a dhamma, but in reality, such dhamma is not original and is called occasionally presented dhamma or dhamma arida. Let's look at this verb, uqdu. Its 3rd letter, the dad, appears to have a dhamma. But if we examine the origin of this verb, source singular command tense iqdi, we'll find that it has a kasra on the 3rd letter. So how did it adopt a dhamma? Where did this dhamma come from? Here, on uqdu. This dhamma is acquired by adding the plural waw, which is added to the verb. Uqdu, this waw added here, is the reason for this dhamma on the dad. So this dhamma is occasional. It is presented on this 3rd letter not because it's part of the original verb, but because of the situation where the waw of plural has forced it to have a dhamma. And that change in pronunciation happened in order for it to be homogeneous with the pronunciation of the plural waw. Thus, we call this dhamma occasional and not original. So in conclusion, this kasra that we have here that is associated with the presented occasional dhamma in ibnu is based on the original verb that has a kasra, not on the verb that is modified by the plural waw, ibnu. So in this case of occasional dhamma, we say ibnu, ibnu, not ubnu as in original dhamma, ibnu with a kasra, on the basis of the original verb with kasra, not on the modified verb with the waw of the plural. Now we're going to talk about the cases where connecting Hamza, Hamzatul Wasl, is deleted, where we, in certain situations, do not pronounce Hamzatul Wasl. And that happens when it is preceded by a question Hamza, like in a اشتريت الحليب, meaning did you buy the milk? A اشتريت الحليب. Another case where Hamzatul Wasl is not pronounced when it is preceded with a start lam, where sometimes lam is used to start the speech in Arabic. And the third situation, when a lam is used for assurance, like in this example, la ad-dar, and when it is preceded by a lam in the participle, lal abrar, and when it precedes the word bin, meaning son of, ibn, ayabn, and in full basmala. We don't say bi ismillah, but bismillah. Ismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We don't say bi ismi, we say bismi. So, question, Hamza, a plus اشتريت, a question mark sentence. We don't say a اشتريت. We say اشتريت. اشتريت الحليب. Deleting the connecting Hamza. This Hamzatul Wasl would be deleted and we immediately pronounce the alif followed by the sheen. Now let's take this example of the lam in the start. La plus الذي. We don't say la الذي, but we say للذي. We delete this Hamzatul Wasl and this Hamza and the alif of it, and we directly link the first lam with the للذي lam. Next example is related to lam in order. La plus الدار. We don't say la الدار, but instead we say للدار. للدار الآخرة. Lam in participle, lal abrar. We don't say la al abrar, but we delete this and we say lal abrar. And in regard Hamzatul Wasl and the word bin, there are two situations. The first, when the word ibn is preceded by an appeal letter, like aya ibn Umar. Aya is a calling letter used to call or appeal to the person. So if we say ayabna Umar, we don't say aya ibn Umar, but we say ayabna Umar. We delete the aliful wasl and hamzatul wasl. Now another example or another situation is where ibn, the word bin, appears between two names, like the name of the son followed by his father, like Umar ibn al-Khattab. We don't say Umar ibn al-Khattab, but we say Umar ibn al-Khattab, and we delete the alif and its hamzatul wasl. We say Umar ibn al-Khattab. We'll move now to al-Basmala. When we have Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, we don't say bi ismi Allahi, but we say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and delete the alif of al-wasl and its hamza. Now we're going to talk about a unique situation where one hamza would meet another hamza. And in those situations where the two hamzas would coexist together, the way we pronounce those hamzas would vary depending upon what is the type of hamza that would append the other. Such meeting of two hamzas would have three possibilities: either a separating hamza appending another separating hamza, or a connecting hamza appending a separating hamza, or a separating hamza appending a connecting hamza. We'll start with the first possibility. In that case, the first is with a haraka and the second is with a sukoon. For example, first hamza here is having a fatha, which is followed by a second separating hamza having sukoon. Or first one is having a dhamma followed by one with a sukoon. Or first one is having a kasra followed by a second hamza with sukoon. So such pronunciation of double hamzas is not convenient for the ear. That's why the Arabs convert the second hamza into a mad letter of a category homogeneous with the haraka of the first hamza. We'll illustrate this by this example. Now this would be converted into an exchange mad, as in this example. Instead of saying Adam, we say Adam.
آدم
The second Hamza is changed into a mad alif. Now we're going to take an example for the U. U will be converted into U, as in U2 will be U2.
أوتوا
And here again, the second Hamza is changed into a mad waw. The third example is the I converted into E, as in Imana would be pronounced Imana.
إيمانا
So the second Hamza is changed into a mad ya. Now we're going to talk about the second situation where the connecting Hamza append a separating Hamza. In this situation, the first connecting Hamza with haraka, like U or E, and the second separating Hamza would be with sukun. So U, I. In this situation, again, the second Hamza would be converted into a mad letter of a category homogeneous with the haraka of the first Hamza, as we're going to illustrate in the example. The reason is this will prevent the meeting of two silent letters with sukun, as we have done here by converting it into a mad letter. So if we have U, it will be converted into U, the waw homogeneous to the dhamma of the first Hamza. And the I would be converted into E. The ya is homogeneous to the haraka of the kasra of the first connecting Hamza. And the example for the first one is tumina. Tumina.
فليؤدي الذي اؤتمن أمانته
And this tumina can be pronounced as tumina. Tumina. Now we're going to take the second example for the I, where we can convert the second Hamza into a ya, because the ya is homogeneous to the kasra of the first Hamza, like i'tuni can be pronounced as ituni.
ائتوني بكتاب من قبل هذا
Similarly, then
يقول ائذن لي
can be pronounced then, where second Hamza may be changed into a ya. So in this case, when the connecting Hamza append the separating Hamza of the I, we had two possibilities. In one, we pronounced it with a ya, ituni. In the other, we had a choice to pronounce it with the Hamza, then. So in the situation, it's the choice to pronounce this or that, while when it was in the separating Hamza, we always converted those into a mad, Adam, Utu, Imana. So we covered those two situations. Now we're going to move to this situation where the separating Hamza append connecting Hamza. A separating Hamza would be appending a connecting Hamza or Alif. And this has two possibilities. Either it happens in verbs or it happens in nouns. Let's start with the first situation when the separating Hamza comes before a connecting Hamza in verbs, like this. A separating Hamza coming before the connecting Hamza. And if we look at a verb, like in this case, iftara, starting with a connecting Hamza, iftara, and we proceeded with a separating Hamza, a iftara. This a is used to question. Did he do this? So did he do the verb? Iftara means lied. So a iftara means did he lie? A iftara. Now we don't pronounce it a iftara, but we pronounce it like this. Aftara. Aftara. Let's listen to Sheikh al-Husari.
أفترى على الله كذبا أم به جنة
So we didn't say a iftara, but we said aftara. And what we did here is that this second Hamza has fallen out. So in this situation, the separating Hamza used at the beginning can be used to trigger a question. We call that a questioning Hamza, a questioning separating hamza. And if we use this before a verb, and that verb starts with a kasra, iftara, then in this situation, the second connecting hamza falls out in writing and pronunciation. We don't say a'i, iftara, but we say aftara, so it totally falls out. Another example, a istakbarta, we pronounce it astakbarta, astakbarta. Let's listen to Shaykh al-Husari.
أستكبرت أم كنت من العالين.
So astakbarta, the second hamza has fallen out. One more example, a istafa, we pronounce it astafa. Let's listen to al-Husari.
أصطفى البنات على البنين.
Meaning, did he choose? And again, astafa, the second hamza, falls up. Now we're going to move to the nouns, where the separating hamza comes before the connecting hamza of al-ta'rif. We're going to give an example. A questioning separating hamza of a, followed by connecting hamza of al-ta'rif of a noun, which is lafz al-jalala, Allah. So we have a, Allah, a, first hamza, Allah, second hamza, but we don't pronounce it like this, Allah. Instead, we pronounce it Allah. So the second hamza remains, but lengthened, given a mad. Let's listen to Shaykh al-Husari giving this mad.
الله خير أما يشركون.
So this first hamza represents a question. Is Allah better, or what they ascribe with him? So it is a questioning hamza followed by a connecting hamza. We keep both, presenting the first with a hamza on line, the second one is presented with an alif with a mad symbol. So the separating hamza, when it comes with a fatha, indicating a questioning hamza, when it is followed by a connecting hamza of the, identifying the al-ta'rif of a name, in this case the name of lafz al-jalala, Allah, then what we do is we keep the second hamza and give it a mad. So it's presented with an alif with a mad symbol. Alif with a mad symbol. In the whole Holy Quran, there are only 3 words that are repeated in 6 places in which questioning separating hamza precedes the connecting hamza of al-ta'rif, the identifying the of a name, a, al. And the Tajweed rule for such a scenario is that the second hamza, the connecting hamza, would remain but would be modified into one of 2 possibilities. The first possibility, where it is modified by exchanging it into an alif with a mad symbol, but the reader has an option of modifying it into easing the pronunciation of its connecting hamza. Remember the example we've given, Allah, we said we can modify it into a mad. This connecting alif or hamza can be modified into a mad. Allah. The second connecting hamza is exchanged with an alif with mad.
Allah.
The second possibility, with the same Allah, can be pronounced differently. Allah. We call this easing of the second connecting hamza. So we had 2 options. The first one is mad, Allah, and the second one is easing, Allah. Now we're going to take another example, a plus al-dhakarain. There is a first hamza, which is a questioning separating hamza, followed by al-ta'rif, starting with the connecting alif or connecting hamza, al-dhakarain. We don't say al-dhakarain, but we will modify it either into mad, al-dhakarain. We exchange the second hamza with an alif with mad.
al-dhakarain.
And the second possibility, where we can ease this into al-dhakarain. The third word is a plus al-ana. the questioning separating hamza with al-tarif starting with the connecting hamza, al-ana. This third word can either be pronounced with mad, where the second connecting hamza is exchanged with an alif with mad as we listen.
الآن.
And we have the other option of pronouncing it eased. الآن. So these are the three words, Allah, الذكرين, الآن, can be either pronounced with a mad or pronounced eased. And it is the situation where it is pronounced with a mad that we call this modification a differentiation mad. And this is the mad we're going to discuss now. And this is the relationship between bringing the Hamazat with this mad lesson due to this relation in those words. So the differentiation mad is defined when a questioning separating Hamza precedes a noun that is identified by al-ta'rif, by the identifying the. A separating questioning Hamza is followed by al-ta'rif started with a connecting Hamza. The connecting Hamza is modified into an alif with mad. Alif with mad. This is called the differentiation mad. And it's called differentiation mad because it's used to differentiate between a question format versus a news format. Let's take an example. Allahu amaraka bihada means Allah ordered you with so, versus Allahu amaraka bihada, which questions? Did Allah ordered you to do so? The first one is a news, the second one is a question. And this Hamza and the mad associated with its pronunciation is basically what differentiates a news from a question format. And that's why we call the mad associated with this Hamza a differentiation mad. And the rule of the differentiation mad is a compulsory elongation of the mad vowel for 6 units. So we say Allahu, a compulsory elongation of the a for 6 units or 6 movements. Let's look now at قواعد ألوان التجويد, the Tajweed color legend, looking for the dark red color in this page. And we'll find Allahu khayrun amma yushrikun. So this alif with mad, given the dark red color here, is of al-ta'rif of Allah, preceded by a questioning separating Hamza, followed by a connecting Hamza, converted into an a with a mad before lafdhu jalala Allah, for which we apply a compulsory elongation for 6 units as the Tajweed rule for differentiation mad, which is itself a section of the compulsory mad. Let's quickly remind you with different types of mad that we have mentioned in our introduction on mad. We've explained that there is a primary mad, which is lengthened naturally for 2 units, and anything that is lengthened beyond 2 units is called secondary mad. And we have mentioned that the primary mad itself has similar mads that are associated with it. There is the exchange, substitute, and lesser connecting mads, 3 types of mad in addition to the primary, while the secondary mad is further classified under 2 categories based on what causes the lengthening beyond natural, where it can be caused either by a hamza or by a sukun. Those that are due to hamzas are 3. They are the attached, separated, and greater connecting mad. Those that are due to sukun are basically the compulsory mad, the incidental sukun mad, and the softly mad. So we've learned that there are 9 types of mad, and we learned also that some scholars would also add a 10th type, they call it the differentiation mad, while other scholars consider this type as a subdivision of the compulsory mad. And in that introduction, we have talked about the colors associated with different types of mad, where we have said that there are 4 colors given to the mad among the 8 colors used in Tajweed color legend in Mushaf al-Tajweed. And we have indicated that the color used for compulsory and differentiation mad is the dark red color, indicating a compulsory elongation for 6 units. Now, we're going to discuss the 2 types of differentiation mad. There is a heavy differentiation mad and a light one. The heavy differentiation mad occurs when the letter following the connecting hamza of the identifying the, al-ta'rif, is stressed with a shadda. Let's look at the example, Allah. We'll find that what follows al-tarif of Lafd al-Jalala, Allah, the second lam of Allah has a shadda as we see here. A second example, al-Dhakarain, we find that the al-tarif is followed by a dhal with a shadda. Differentiation mad would be light when there is no shadda, as in al-ana. In here we find that al-tarif is followed by a letter that does not have a shadda, as it was in this case. Now we're going to take examples on the different types. We'll start with the first example related to Allah. In Surah An-Naml here, we will listen to Shaykh al-Husari reciting this ayah. And let's concentrate on the first word, which has a questioning hamza followed by Lafd al-Jalala, Allah. Let's listen to Shaykh al-Husari.
الله خير أما يشركون.
And let's concentrate on this word, Allah. This word, Allah, is starting with a questioning hamza, which is a type of a separating hamza that is preceding the al-ta'rif. This al-ta'rif that we see down here has alif and lam. The alif is the connecting hamza part of al-ta'rif. It is this connecting second hamza that would be exchanged with an alif with mad, and it is followed by a shadda on the lam following al-ta'rif, and that's why we call this mad a heavy differentiation mad, the rule of which is to apply compulsory elongation mad on this alif for 6 units.
الله.
We have lengthened this for 6 units. We'll go for the second example, الذكرين.
قل الذكرين حرم أم الأنثيين.
And we're going to focus on الذكرين. And again we find that this word is starting with a questioning hamza, which preceding another hamza of al-ta'rif. This one, the connecting hamza of al-ta'rif, is the one that is going to be exchanged with an alif with mad. And here also we realize that al-ta'rif is followed by a letter with shadda. So it is this emphasis, this shadda, following al-ta'rif that makes us call this type of differentiation mad a heavy differentiation mad. We lengthen the alif, a compulsory elongation mad for 6 units. Now we're going to take an example on the light differentiation mad, al-ana. And let's listen to ayah 91 from Surah Yunus by Shaykh al-Husari.
الآن وقد عصيت قبل وكنت من المفسدين.
So if we focus on al-ana, we realize that it starts with a questioning hamza that is preceding a connecting hamza of al-ta'rif, which is to be exchanged by an alif with mad, and this al-ta'rif is followed by a non-emphasized letter. There is no shadda here, it's only a fatha, ana. So this is a type of light differentiation mad, yet still have the same rule of heavy differentiation mad, which is compulsory elongation of the mad letter for 6 units. We apply compulsory mad elongation for the alif for 6 units. Let's now put what we have learned into some practice by attempting to extract the differentiation mad and conclude the related tajweed rules from the shaded verses in these pages of the Quran. We'll look here for a mad letter with a dark red color, and we'll find here Allahu. In Allahu, we find the questioning hamza followed by an alif with a mad symbol, and the al-ta'rif here is followed by the shadda. That's why this is a heavy differentiation mad. Let's move to a different page with another example and search for a dark red mid letter. We'll find الآن الآن. Again, a questioning hamza followed by an alif with a mad symbol, but al-ta'rif here is followed by a non-emphasized letter, a letter that has no shadda. It is a fatha in this case. That's why it is a light differentiation mad. A very important note to keep in mind is that there exists an alternative or a synonymous name for the connecting hamza that is used nowadays, which is connecting alif. So, connecting hamza or hamzatul wasl is equivalent to connecting alif or aliful wasl. The connecting hamza in Uthmani script of Quran symbol is a small sad on top of an alif. A small sad on top of an alif. While the connecting hamza in contemporary writing of Arabic today is not symbolized by a small sad. Instead, it is written as a plain alif without a hamza. That's why some modern Arabic language scholars would prefer to call it a connecting alif rather than a connecting hamza. Now we're going to summarize the lesson on Hamazat in this table in one slide, where we would compare the separating hamza and the connecting hamza. And the first basis for comparison is from the perspective of originality, where separating hamza is an original letter of the word, while connecting hamza is not. It is an extra added hamza to the start of the word. As for the location, since separating hamza is original part of the word, then it can be anywhere, either at the start, the middle, or the end of the word, while the connecting hamza is only added to the start of the word, to the beginning of the word. With respect to pronunciation, separating hamza is always pronounced. It is pronounced whether we start reading at the beginning of the word that has the hamza, and it is also pronounced at continuing reading through the word. While the connecting hamza is only pronounced when we start reading with the word that has the hamza, and it is dropped when continuing reading through the word from a previous word, which means it will not be pronounced. That's why it's called connecting hamza. Now we'll look how the hamza is written depending on its place. If it is written at the start of the word, it will be written over an alif if it has a fatha or dhamma, and will be written under the alif if it has a kasra. While if it is at the middle or the end of the word, then it would be written on line or on an alif, or on a waw or an ya, as appropriate for each situation. As of the writing for the connecting hamza, it's written over the alif if it has a fatha or dhamma, while it will be written under the alif if it has a kasra. As for the symbol used for separating hamza, it looks like a small head of a ayn letter, while for the connecting hamza, it looks like a small sad. And we took examples on each: anjayna with a separating hamza, and ista'inu with a small sad on the Uthmani script of the connecting hamza. That small sad in Uthmani script is absent in modern writing of the connecting hamza, which we sometimes call connecting alif. Now we're going to summarize the differentiation mad in one slide. We described that the differentiation mad is a subsection of the compulsory mad, which occurs when a questioning hamza precedes a noun defined with al-ta'rif, where in that case the second connecting hamza would be exchanged into an alif with mad, and that mad differentiates question from news format, and that's why it's called a differentiation mad. And we said that the rule in that case is to apply compulsory elongation of the alif for 6 units, and there are two types, a heavy differentiation mad and a light differentiation mad. The heavy one is followed, al-ta'rif is followed by a shadda, while the light one is not followed by a shadda. And the example of the heavy was الذكرين, the shadda here. And the example of light is الآن. There is no shadda in this case. And with that summary, we reach the conclusion of our lesson on Hamazat in the Holy Quran and differentiation mad. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that بعونه وقدرته that the Quran learning management system برنامج الجامع لحفظ كتاب الله would help you, inshallah, to improve your tajweed and improve your tilawah and help you in improving your recitation and help you, if you want, in memorizing the Quran and to help you understand the Quran in the proper way. As we reach the end, we ask Al-Mawla Azza wa Jal أن يتقبل منا هذا العمل. We ask Allah Almighty to accept this work from us, and we ask you to make dua for those who participated in making this work come to life and reach you. Hoping you all the best. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.